Yeah, as you get more experienced and you're in practice longer, I think it's fairly typical that you do get simpler. I think that just goes across the board about anything, actually. Don't you think the more expert you get, tends to be, it's like you just know the terrain, you know the way the body moves in these sessions, you know, it tends to morph and shift in, you know, very idiosyncratic ways, I think. Plus, I think your touch just becomes much more knowing, you know, it's like, yeah, I felt that many, many times. Yes. You know, oh, that's the pull of the liver, or that's a membranous, this or that, and that's the somatics, and now there's a visceral thing going on. There's the vertebral column and so on. I think that just starts to colour in wonderfully. So you know that, and you know the feeling of what's the body doing in terms of health, you know, how much health is showing. Maybe that's one of the biggest things, actually. You know, thinking back in time, I'm not sure, you know, I think I've got better at relating to health, you know, listening to health and actually what it is, what's the feel of health. And even, you know, people who are not well at all, you know, chronic, this or that, really strong pathologies, you know, sometimes I touch them and think, what pathology? You know, because I think it's, you've just become very honed at the skill of listening to, you know, the vitality of the body.
I think it's a really good question for me around biodynamics. Is where is health, and that sense of acknowledging the conditions and the pain and the suffering, but there's health and it's available somehow. It might be obscured or hidden, but a sense of trust for me that will emerge at some stage. That, and my responses are much less clever in terms of I'm not just busy or thinking. It's just this act of being present is, I've really learned to trust that something will emerge out of
It's
that.
profound enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Within itself.
Yeah.
I think I've also become much easier at waiting.
Yeah.
You know, I used to intercede in all kinds of different ways, you know, things weren't really happening, and I think I'm happy to sit and wait a lot more. Having said that, really looking, you know, thinking back in time, there used to be many client sessions where actually nothing much would happen. And, you know, I don't know the last time that happened. You know, even somebody with very severe condition. And I think that says a lot about the emergence of this very smart contact that we're generating. You know, it is insightful. You know, it's listening to the nuances of movement, and really, you know, not just the dance of life in the body, but I think we become trauma experts in a very, very clever way. You know, the better I've got at going, that's a hyperarousal state, you know, or that's this or that aspect of trauma. That's a huge acknowledgement. There's somebody suffering with detail. It's not like, oh, you're suffering. It's like, no, I really can hear your physiological suffering. And that's a wonderful counselling. You know, the body goes mad for it, actually.
I pick up on your point that there's sitting without a sense of not much happening. For me, it can be very quiet, but there's always this tone of being in a relationship. There's this tone of we're together here. And when that's not there, then I can be very nimble and quick and start being more playful to help the relationship, to help us be in a relationship. But once you've got that tone of relationship, then the body will show you something. It will show you something interesting. And you know, 80% of the time, all you need to do is just wait and listen and, you know, keep being present with it. And then there's 20% of the time where it's, you know, you be a bit nimble or respond or, you know, down-regulate things for someone so that they can feel safe in this potential.
Yes, it's getting less and less all that, isn't it? That interceding. You know, I think, yeah, me too. I mean,
I'm stuck at 20%, Jade.
You're stuck at 20%. No, I mean, I'm thinking it used to be 60, you know, and then it's all, you know, you're probably right, it's about 20%, but, and I think in the training we're talking, in a way, less and less about how you might intercede. I think that's been one of the shifts for me in this training, that, last 10 years, is there's no need to do it so much anymore. People's responsiveness seems to be so profound.
Yeah, one of my answers still to biodynamics is less is more. This Taoist notion, or for me, I learned that through Taoism, of an elegance and an order about how things can manifest. The simplest way is often the best way, and really us getting out of the way. I mean, there's a normal amount of skill to practice being present, but when that's there, then the body unfolds for you, and it's endlessly delicious and easy and joyful, really, to witness that.
I've got this thing that you need to get to a sort of proficient skill level, and then we're all the same. All practitioners are equally effective, and you don't need to be in practice for 20 years. You know what I mean? It's like the body needs a certain amount of skillful listening, and beyond that, it doesn't matter. It can do it itself.
That's very interesting,
isn't it? It's really exciting, though. I think it's a leveling.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really like is the way, I used to listen to unfoldment, or the system unfolding itself. And I think it's only recently I've really started to appreciate that, because I think I was always sort of looking for wholeness, or looking for the body as a unit, or this sort of deeper health, and actually just needs a while to come through. So often when I put my hands on people, things do start locally. Things do start here and start to shift and change, and then there's some deeper movement, and then that reveals another section of the body. And actually, a treatment or treatments are required to bring the body into a full conversation with itself. And I know that sounds a bit obvious, but I think there's a beautiful waiting for the body to unfold and kind of join up.
Yep.
All the dots to join up, and when that happens, it's the most profound thing.
But also, I think we quickly get to the point where I noticed in the middle of the second year on our courses is there's lots of struggle to help people frame what they're feeling and to develop a certain skill set. And then it gets to this place where they're consistently creating safety. Maybe what you said, enough safety that as much as anybody needs or something like that. And then the students start coming up with all these questions around this was moving in this particular way. And they represent that, and they expect me to say, yes, I can explain that. And it's like, I have a certain, quite minimal actually, set of things that I can feel confident about naming that I've explored and shared. And then there's this great mystery of what individual bodies do and how you experience that.
And how everyone perceives it.
And it's like to trust that on your journey that'll make sense for you, to start creating universals out of that I can't do that, I found. There's some very simple things that I think you feel very skillful at, an enormous change. And then it's just, enjoy the ride, and there'll be things that are unexplainable to anybody but the two people who are there.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think I avoid that too, coming up with some universal explanations of things, or having an answer for every expression in the body, because, as you say, we all listen to little facets of this, huge, galactic orchestra playing in the background, really, and, Lord knows what's happening there half the time.
Yep.
But yeah, more and more it's the treatments are becoming a movie, aren't they? It is like a movie. I mean, I can't, the amount of moving around I used to do when I first started this work, one hand on here, one hand on there, and always kind of seeking for things without thinking I was. So, really enjoying just letting the body reveal itself, letting the body kind of come to you. And that takes some doing, and I think it's one of the hardest things to explain, what is the inherent treatment plan. And, in the beginning that can be a little bit mysterious and, fluffy. It doesn't sound like much. It's only really when you sat with enough bodies and watch this organic movement from within and the way the body does sort of morph itself, that you start to understand what it might be.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite something actually.
Yeah, and it's quite, I mean, it's a thing that you can't know what this body needs. So give up trying to know, really. Other than...
Yeah, what's the combination to unlock this body, you know?
You don't let the child put the hand in the fire, so there's certain ground rules, but within that space, then you don't know, you can't know, give up trying to know, and watch the movie.
Watch the movie,
Be with the movie, because the body will change.
Yeah.
I do think we know that my knowing is that bodies will change in this process, and it's a movement towards health, not away from health. And that, I think that's a big judgment. There's a moment in my clinical practice where I began to assume that would be okay. It's like a fundamental moment of trust that if you create these, people will fall on the side of health. They're not going to go to more disorganisation and chaos if you set up the relationship in this sort of simple way.
You're right though, you need quite a lot of sessions to believe that, or to trust that that's the case. You know, that you've seen many clients and they've come in with, you know, strong health conditions, and they've shifted and changed and gone through some quite difficult processes, and at the end it's all starting to become more resourced and behaviours changing and the body's more aligned and so on. You know, you need 1,000 of those sessions to go, yeah, of course. 10,000?
A couple of hundred, I'd say.
200.
Would you, what would you let go of within the cranial paradigm?
Currently?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, anything. I mean, the paradigm being what's in this curriculum, or the paradigm out there, generally.
Yeah, if we had to explain it to a skeptic, what bits would you defend and what bits might you be...
It's always tricky talking about, you know, the kind of esoteric aspects of this word, which is, you know, there's this tide-like rhythm and this notion of potency, which is as good as saying there's a subtle energy. It's like saying chi or prana, really, which in a way is certain people can hear that and certain people can't hear that. Depends who you're talking to.
Explains a mystery in terms of another mystery. Possibly.
It does really. I mean, skeptics would probably just go like that. I think so much of this what is experiential, and that's part of the issue with, you know, BCST. It's part of the issue of us two sat here talking to each other, going, what is BCST, and whoever listens to this, because really at the end of the day, until you get the hands laid on you from a BCST therapist, it's not going to make too much sense.
It's a deeply embodied practice of being in the body. That's not simple, and a guide and a witness through touch, for me, is the only way you can experience that.
It really is.
So I kind of, for me, that sense of people change when you touch them. I say that a lot these days. And how can we touch people more skillfully, and how can, in that, my sense is that physiology shifts to a place of greater safety if that's done well. So that for me is a central tenet of what I do, and I find myself using that as an explanation more and more. Can I say one thing I might let go of?
Yeah,
I'm really not interested in bones moving.
Yeah.
Kind of a head distorting.
Yes.
And the notion of a baby's head as a fluid balloon, and that underlying quality feels very important to me.
You mean like moving around articulations, the whole
the sort of cogs,
cranial sacral motion cog thing?
That
it's a bit coggy, isn't it?
It is, and
yes,
it's still...
Yes, I know what you mean. Sometimes I am holding the bits and pieces of the skull thinking, this is all very interesting about the sphenoid does this and the temporals do that, but really in a BCST session, how often do you really feel that? Probably occasionally, not too often. You don't go, oh, there's a sphenoid going into flexion. It's not like that. And that's how far this approach has travelled from the original work.
Yeah.
That really has become slightly not what the body's showing you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you on that.
But it's also the first thing often that people say.
Yeah.
The first thing that people well, critique around cranial work is that
They do.
the bones in the head move and you're trying to interact with those. I could very happily define what I do, letting go of the notion that bones rock and fit together. A skull that accommodates, like a table, you look at it and it looks stable, but it creaks and it has this sort of movement of not being quite
I
stable.
think it's well said actually. Because in a real session, what we would probably notice is bones melt and go and liquefy, and the head becomes highly, or wherever becomes highly membranous and fluid-like.
Yeah.
That seems to be what's going on most of the time.
I think for me very much there's a huge neurology in the dura and the periosteum.
Yeah.
That sense of a softening or ease. That trigeminal ganglion is huge. It's got the teeth, it's got the face, but it's also got the dura. And
that's what shows up more.
Yeah, that sense
Something
of
like that.
nervous system down-regulating, tissue
Yeah.
shifted, blood flowing. That stuff for me is...
It's the order of the day.
Yeah, and you
Totally
feel
with
sort
you.
of tissues just reshaping themselves, and then this shift into wholeness where it's a whole fluid bag, a whole bag of cells, a whole network of protein fibres sort of interacting and moving. That really excites me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really with you. I think I like the history of the work. I like where it's come from and the early discoveries, because they are remarkable. You know, the Sutherland's work, of course, is stunning. So I can't. Part of the training, I think, is going, look, here's the classical model. So I think that's what I do with it. But in practice, hardly.
I wouldn't be able to teach this work without people appreciating Sutherland and Becker. I mean, clearly genius and
and their theories,
Yeah.
even though they might not be so much part of this paradigm now.
and the integrity of their journey to actually try and understand and work with.
I was teaching the Venus Sinus, the seminar, and I do like going, look, this is the mechanical interventions here, and these were the reasons they were done in that way, and it was all very smart. There's great thinking here, but actually you don't need to do that. It's so linear, it's not a holistic, organic process. The body's not really getting its say in it. It is being sort of driven through something, however useful it might be. And I think that's really useful to explain. And this is the reason we don't do that, and why we do this. And actually, the reason we're doing this is so that you will recognise these flows and movements and reorganisations. You go, oh yeah, there's the Venus sinus shifting here, and now there's a rush of vasodilation and all that sort of thing. That's so going back to what you're saying. What you're saying to the skeptics and people who want to know about this work. Really, my big pitch is the body is a fabric. It's one big fabric, and this notion that things are separate within it is just not true. It's a continuum, and I'm always keen to get that out to people. That so you can touch, and if you're really in tune with the continuity of the body, you can feel it for what it is in its own nature, which isn't in bits. There's no such thing as a bit of a body unless it's dropped off you. It really isn't.
Yeah.
So that's my pitch, and getting people to understand that maybe biological science in its desire to understand the body is actually creating quite a lot of separation.
Yeah.
You look at books, you look at videos, and it's all like that, isn't it? But that's not the living body at all.
No, I think core thing for me around biodynamic craniosacral theory would be embodiment. We exist in a body, and that's not simple. But when you achieve that, there's a clarity and ease around that. And achieve it is an ongoing process, really. I still move in and out of feeling in those places that have been peak experiences for me. But really, that sense of just trying to meet your body, and there's nothing worth giving up your body for. Anything that's happened to you or someone's done something to you, to lose relationship to that, to sort of, there's a big hole in your awareness or kind of...
It's a disaster.
An attempt to ignore, because my foot's painful, I'm trying to ignore it. That's never a price worth paying, really.
Sure, well, because it's you.
Yeah.
So you're losing part of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, on many levels. There's no doubt about that.
So the attempt to meet that and celebrate that and help someone occupy the whole of their space,
Yeah.
and to include much more in the space actually as the work develops. For me, that's about biodynamics, and that's simple and elegant and sort of it's not a striving. When it happens well, it's a very easy, fluid
Nice.
process.
Talking about fluids, that's my other pitch, that really we're mostly fluid. And I think the essence of this therapy is that it's fluid based. It's about appreciating that fluidity within us. And I really like to say, hey, we're really not solid at all. I mean, that's the peculiarity of existence, that we feel like we're some kind of solid mass. We're far from it, and actually when somebody gets on the table and is touched in the right way, they reveal their true self, which is a fluid body. That's really what we are mostly, and that's where things heal. Extremely powerful. There's more self-awareness, there's more kind of intelligent movements coming from the systems of the body in that space, and that's where it all happens really. That's the therapeutic shift zone.
Cool. So Jed, one of the things I have to do with students at the end of the course is if you've got 3 sentences to say what biodynamic craniosacral therapy is, what would that be? And I always say, if you asked any tutor, they'd have to do it really quickly. They'd be able to do that really quickly. So we just said it would be simple at the start, but we've ended up talking for 40 minutes. But Jed, what is biodynamic craniosacral therapy in 3 sentences maybe, or something short?
Quite simply, it's about the body making its own adjustments from within. And really, it just needs a facilitated touch to do that. It's as simple as that. How many sentences is that? Anyway, back at you. What do you got around that?
There's an intelligence with human beings, and through relationship, that intelligence can reorganize, and it's something about wholeness and not fixing things. This principle of honouring an organism that is trying to achieve health. That could be the start of a conversation.
Beautiful. That was a paragraph.